The millionaire's disabled daughter couldn't stand until the new maid did something unbelievable. Aurelio Sterling was one of the most powerful and wealthy men in America. At 42, he had built an entire technology empire, owning skyscrapers in New York and countless projects spread across the globe. People often referred to him as the cold billionaire. He avoided lavish parties, shunned interviews, and buried himself in endless numbers. Success had made him untouchable, but it had also left him completely alone. Behind all that glory was a life filled with emptiness. His wife, Amelia, had passed away 3 years earlier after a sudden illness. Since then, the vast mansion on the Upper East Side echoed only with Aurelio's heavy footsteps, and from time to time, the clear, innocent voice of his daughter, Lyra. Lyra was Aurelio's only remaining hope, yet fate had played a cruel joke on them. She was born with fragile legs and had to rely on crutches to move around. Aurelio loved his daughter, but he did not know how to show it. The pain of losing his wife, combined with the pressure of running a global corporation, pushed him to bury himself in work instead of spending time with Lyra. Day after day, he left the house at dawn and returned after 9 o'clock at night, when the little girl was already fast asleep. For Aurelio, it was the only way to escape a loss he could not bring himself to face. Inside that magnificent mansion, Lyra grew up surrounded by nurses, tutors, and a handful of household staff. Among them was a quiet yet patient presence, Maribel Cruz. The 28-year-old woman had been hired to do housework and to look after Lyra when needed. With her long hair neatly tied back and her warm, gentle brown eyes, Maribel did not stand out amid the luxury of the house. Yet she was the only one who truly listened to every whisper Lyra shared. Aurelio barely noticed Maribel. To him, she was just another employee among many who worked in the house. But on one autumn evening, when a meeting ended earlier than expected, Aurelio decided to return home without any prior notice. That decision would open the door to the greatest turning point of his life. When the massive doors of the mansion opened, Aurelio froze at the sight before him. In the middle of the living room, Maribel Cruz was kneeling on the floor, a cleaning rag in her hand. But that was not what stunned him. Beside her, Lyra, his daughter, was wobbling on her tiny purple crutches, holding a cloth and trying to help. "Miss Maribel, I can wipe here," the blonde-haired girl said, her voice trembling with effort. "All right, Lyra. You've helped enough for today. Go sit on the sofa and rest. Let Miss Maribel finish up," Maribel replied gently. "But I want to help. You always say we're a team," Lyra insisted, struggling to keep her balance, her blue eyes shining with determination. Aurelio stood rooted to the spot, unable to breathe. His chest tightened with emotions he could not name. He could not remember the last time he had seen Lyra smile so freely. "All right then, my little assistant. But just a little bit more, okay?" Maribel relented. Just then, Lyra noticed her father standing in the doorway. Her face lit up, mixed with surprise and worry. "Dad, you're home early?" she exclaimed, almost falling as she turned too quickly. Maribel startled and jumped to her feet, dropping the rag. She hastily wiped her hands on her apron and lowered her head slightly. "Good evening, Mr. Sterling. I didn't know you would be home so early. I was just finishing the cleaning." Aurelio still could not piece his thoughts together. He looked at his daughter, then at Maribel, who looked as though she wished she could disappear from the room. "Lyra, what are you doing?" he asked. "I'm helping Miss Maribel. Look, Dad," Lyra said proudly. "Today I stood on my own for almost 5 minutes." Aurelio turned to Maribel. She kept her head down, her hands clenched tightly. 5 minutes?" Aurelio repeated, unable to believe what he was hearing. Lyra eagerly explained, "Miss Maribel makes me practice every day. She says if I keep trying, one day I'll be able to run like the other kids." The room fell into a heavy silence. Aurelio felt both confused and deeply moved. "Practice?" he asked sharply. Maribel lifted her head, her brown eyes filled with fear. "Sir, I was just playing with her. I didn't mean to go beyond my duties." Lyra quickly stepped in, trying to stand between her father and Maribel. "Dad, Miss Maribel is wonderful. She never leaves me when I cry because it hurts. She says I'm strong like a warrior." Aurelio's chest tightened. How long had it been since he had spoken to his daughter for more than 5 minutes? He swallowed hard. "Lyra, go up to your room. I need to speak with Miss Maribel." "But, Dad—" "Lyra, listen to me." The girl looked at Maribel. Maribel smiled reassuringly, signaling that everything was fine. With the soft clatter of her crutches, Lyra made her way up the stairs. Just before disappearing from view, she shouted back, "Miss Maribel is the best person in the world." Only Aurelio and Maribel remained in the room. He walked slowly toward her. For the first time, he noticed her hands, red and raw from scrubbing the floor, and the damp fabric at the knees of her pants. "How long have you been training with Lyra?" he asked. "About 6 months, sir, but I always use my lunch break or finish my chores first. I've never neglected my work." "You weren't paid extra?" "No, sir. I never expected anything. I just enjoy being with her." Aurelio fell silent. Then he asked softly, "Why do you say my daughter is special?" Maribel smiled gently. "Because she never gives up, even when it hurts a lot. Because she has a big heart and always worries about others. Lyra is truly wonderful." Those words cut into Aurelio's heart like a knife. He had never looked at his daughter through such eyes. "Where did you learn these exercises?" he asked. Maribel lowered her head, hesitating. I have a bit of experience." "What kind of experience?" Aurelio pressed. After a long silence, she confessed, "My younger brother, Thomas, was born with weak legs. I spent my entire childhood taking him to physical therapy, learning exercises to help him walk. When I saw Lyra so sad, I couldn't just stand by." "Please forgive me, sir, but she is very lonely, and you are always consumed by work." Aurelio couldn't find the words to respond. "If you want, I'll stop immediately. I just want her to smile more. A child should smile every day." Aurelio stood frozen. He suddenly realized he couldn't even remember the last time Lyra had truly smiled. "Maribel, may I ask you a personal question?" "Yes, of course, sir." "Why do you work as a housekeeper? You clearly understand therapy and are very good with children. Why not work in healthcare?" Maribel gave a sad smile. "Because I don't have any formal qualifications, sir. Everything I know comes from taking care of my brother. It has no official value, but I have to work to support my family, my mother and my brother Thomas. He's only 16, goes to school in the morning, and helps out at a shop in the afternoon. My mother works the night shift, cleaning offices. We earn just enough to get by." Aurelio felt both ashamed and deeply admiring. Standing before him was a 28-year-old woman, worn thin by family burdens, yet still giving her time and tenderness to his daughter. "Have you ever thought about studying to become a licensed therapist?" he asked. Maribel smiled, but there was bitterness in it. "Study for what, sir? With what money? With what time? I leave home at 6 in the morning, take 2 buses to get here, work until 6 in the evening, then take 2 buses back home, and arrive around 8. I help my brother with his homework, cook, and go to bed close to midnight. On weekends, I clean other houses to earn extra money. Where would I find the time to study?" Aurelio fell silent, for the first time truly listening to her life beyond the 8 hours she spent in his mansion. "Maribel, I want to see the exercises you do with Lyra." She hesitated. "But she's already in her pajamas. We usually practice in the morning, before her online classes. I arrive at 7:30 to prepare breakfast. While the household is still asleep, Lyra and I go out to the garden to practice. After that, she bathes, eats breakfast, and then goes to class. Aurelio was stunned. He knew nothing about his daughter's mornings. He always left before 7 and returned after 9 at night. "Does Lyra like those exercises?" he asked. "She loves them. At first they were painful and difficult, but now she's the one who asks to practice. Yesterday, she stood for almost 3 minutes without her crutches." Aurelio's eyes widened. The therapist had said it would take many more months to reach that kind of progress. Maribel blushed slightly. "Maybe Lyra has extra motivation. She wants to impress me." She hesitated, then continued, "And she also wants to impress you." Aurelio's throat tightened. He had never known his daughter thought of him that way. Just then, the soft tapping of crutches echoed. Lyra appeared, whispering, "Dad, are you still here?" "You should be sleeping," Aurelio said, his voice no longer stern. "I can't sleep. You're not going to send Miss Maribel away, are you?" Aurelio froze. "Why would you think that?" "Because earlier you looked very serious when you told me to go upstairs. Mom used to dismiss the staff whenever they did something she didn't like." Aurelio looked at Maribel. She lowered her head again. He knelt down to Lyra's eye level. "Lyra, do you like Miss Maribel?" "I like her a lot. She's my best friend." "Why?" Lyra thought for a moment, then answered, "Because she plays with me, listens to me, and never rushes me. She believes I'll be able to walk like the other kids." Aurelio's heart tightened. "What about Dad? Am I your friend too?" Lyra fell silent, then whispered, "You're my dad, not my friend. You're very important. But a friend is someone who's always there." Her answer pierced straight through Aurelio's chest. He turned to Maribel and saw her eyes glistening with tears. "Lyra, Dad wants to be your friend. Will you let me?" Her eyes lit up. "Really, Dad? But being a friend means you have to play with me, listen to my stories, and watch me practice with Miss Maribel." "I will," Aurelio said. Lyra squealed with joy, nearly losing her balance. "Then tomorrow you have to come out to the garden and watch me practice." Aurelio smiled, emotions flooding back after so many years of absence. "I promise." Lyra threw her arms around her father. "Now I have 2 best friends, Dad and Miss Maribel." Aurelio hugged her tightly. "Go to sleep, champion. Tomorrow will be very special." After Lyra went upstairs, Aurelio turned to Maribel. He said only one word. "Thank you." "Thank you for what, sir?" she asked. "For taking care of my daughter when I didn't know how." Maribel smiled shyly. "She is very special. Anyone can love her, but not everyone has the patience and understanding to help her move forward." Aurelio remained silent for a long time, countless thoughts swirling in his mind. "Tomorrow I'll be here," he told himself. He knew that the next morning he had 2 important meetings, a video call with American investors, and a report that needed to be finished. But suddenly, all of it felt meaningless. "Tomorrow morning I'll stay home," Aurelio said firmly, surprising even himself with his own words. That night, when he went into Lyra's room, Aurelio found his daughter fast asleep, her crutches neatly placed beside the bed, as if ready for a new day. He sat down on the edge of the bed and watched her, his heart aching. How long had it been since he last watched her sleep like this? How many moments of her childhood had he missed? He took out his phone, canceled all 3 meetings, and sent an email postponing the video call. For the first time in his career, he chose family first. The next morning, Aurelio woke up at 6:30. He showered, got dressed in simple clothes, something he rarely did on a weekday, and went downstairs to the kitchen. Maribel was already there, preparing breakfast. "Good morning, Maribel," Aurelio said, startling her. "Good morning, Mr. Sterling. You're up very early today." "Is Lyra still asleep?" Yes, sir. She usually wakes up at 7:30. We practice at 8 after breakfast. Aurelio glanced at the clock. It was only 7:15. Is there anything I can help with? Maribel looked flustered. You want to help make breakfast? Of course. What does Lyra like to eat on Monday mornings? Pancakes, sir. She says she needs energy to start the new week. Aurelio laughed softly. Really? I never knew. Maribel smiled. She always says that, and it gives her motivation to practice. Aurelio stood there, watching her stir the batter and pour each pancake. He suddenly realized she wasn't just cooking. She was preparing small moments of joy for his daughter. Why do you care so much about Lyra? He asked. Maribel paused, then answered quietly. When I was little, I often saw my younger brother being left out because of his weak legs. I remember the sadness in his eyes when he wanted to play, but couldn't keep up. I became his best friend, invented games, encouraged him to try new things, and celebrated every small improvement. And it worked. Now Thomas is in high school. He's still limited, but he never gives up. He lives very bravely. Aurelio watched her closely. Deep pride shone in Maribel's eyes. And you want that for Lyra. What I want is for her to be happy. I want Lyra to believe she can do anything, because with a family full of love, she'll go even further than my brother ever did. Aurelio's chest tightened with both emotion and shame. His daughter had everything materially, yet lacked the most important thing of all, her parents' attention. Just then, Lyra walked into the kitchen, her hair messy, one hand gripping her small crutch. "Dad," she cried out in surprise, "you're not going to work?" "Good morning, warrior. Today I'm staying home to watch you practice." Lyra's eyes lit up. "Really? You'll see how strong I am." "But first, breakfast. Miss Maribel made special pancakes for you." Lyra squealed with delight and hobbled over to the table on her crutches. Throughout the meal, Aurelio quietly observed. His daughter and Maribel laughed like old friends, sharing little stories and talking about the practice session. Lyra was so happy she couldn't stop showing off to her father. "Dad, did you know yesterday I climbed 3 steps without my crutches?" "Really? That's amazing." "I also know some stretching exercises that grown-ups do." "Stretching?" "Yes, Miss Maribel taught me. She says muscles have to be ready before training." Aurelio looked over at Maribel. He could clearly see that she knew exactly what she was doing. At exactly 8 o'clock, the 3 of them went out into the garden. Maribel spread a mat on the grass. "All right, Lyra, let's start with stretching." Lyra lay down and performed each movement with such care that Aurelio was astonished. "Very good. Now we'll practice balance." She helped Lyra stand up and place the crutches to one side. "Try standing for 30 seconds without the crutches. If you can do it, we'll try 45 seconds tomorrow." "I want to try a full minute." "Slowly. 30 seconds is already very good." Lyra let go of the crutches. Aurelio held his breath, watching his daughter tremble as she struggled to keep her balance. 15 seconds, Maribel counted, her voice full of encouragement. "Dad, do you see?" Lyra called out. "I see. You're doing great." 25, 30. As soon as Maribel finished counting, Lyra wobbled and nearly fell, but Maribel caught her in time. "You did it! 30 seconds!" Aurelio pulled his daughter into a tight embrace, his eyes brimming with tears. "Lyra, I'm so incredibly proud of you." The little girl beamed. "Now you understand why I like practicing with Miss Maribel, right?" "I understand," Aurelio whispered. In the days that followed, Aurelio began to change. He no longer left the house at dawn, but stayed to have breakfast with his daughter and watch her practice every morning. The more he observed, the more astonished he became by Lyra's progress. She could stand longer, walk with greater confidence, and the smile had returned to her small face. One afternoon, while Lyra was drawing in her room, Aurelio invited Maribel into the library. The large room, filled with books, no longer felt as cold as it once had. "Maribel," he said, his voice hesitant before softening, "I owe you far more than a simple thank you. What you've done for Lyra goes far beyond the duties of a housekeeper. You've given my daughter hope, and me as well." Maribel shook her head. "Sir, I only follow my heart. I want nothing more than to see Lyra happy." Aurelio stepped closer, serious yet sincere. "That's exactly why I want to offer you something. I want you to become Lyra's official therapy companion, not just a housekeeper." Maribel froze. I don't understand." "I want you to devote all your time to Lyra. Someone else will handle the household work. Your only responsibility will be to stay by her side, support her, and continue what you're already doing, but with proper recognition and compensation." Maribel looked overwhelmed. "But sir, I don't have any qualifications." "Then I will fund your education," Aurelio interrupted gently. "I'll cover the entire physical therapy training program, tuition, books, everything. During that time, you'll continue working here with Lyra. You'll receive a higher salary, and your family will also be supported." Tears welled up in Maribel's eyes. "Why are you doing all of this for me?" "Not just for you," Aurelio replied softly. "For Lyra. My daughter needs you, not only as a friend, but as a strength I cannot replace. And as for you, I believe you deserve the chance to pursue what you truly have a gift for." Maribel bowed her head, tears streaming down her face. "I won't disappoint you. I promise I'll give my whole heart to Lyra." Aurelio nodded, his eyes filled with trust. For the first time in many years, he saw a bright future opening up, not only for Lyra, but for himself as well. News of Lyra's remarkable progress soon spread through high society. Many whispered in disbelief that a cold billionaire would allow a housekeeper to have such a profound influence on his daughter. At a charity gala, when Maribel appeared in a simple, light blue dress, a few curious and disdainful glances were cast her way. One guest sneered, "How strange! Aurelio Sterling has everything, yet he lets a servant intrude so deeply into his family." Maribel lowered her head, trying to hide the hurt. Lyra squeezed her hand and whispered, "Don't be sad, Maribel. I know you're the best." Aurelio heard it, his blood boiling. He turned to the guests, his voice calm yet commanding. "That woman has accomplished what money and the finest doctors could not. She made my daughter believe she could walk. If you don't understand the value of that, then perhaps we have nothing left to discuss." The room fell silent, but the trials did not end there. A few weeks later, Aurelio received a call from Victor Halden, a wealthy businessman whose nephew had cerebral palsy. "I've heard your housekeeper is very good with special needs children. I want to hire her for my nephew. I'll pay double." Aurelio replied firmly, "Maribel is not for sale. She is my family." A few days later, Maribel herself came to see Aurelio, her eyes full of uncertainty. "They offered to take care of my mother and my brother. That money could change my family's life. But I don't want to leave Lyra." Aurelio looked at her for a long time. "The most important question is this. If you leave, what will happen to my daughter?" Tears streamed down Maribel's face. "She would fall apart. Lyra trusts me as she trusts herself." Aurelio stepped forward, his voice resolute. "Then I won't let that happen. I will take care of your mother and your brother, and more importantly, to me, you are no longer an employee. You are a part of this family." Maribel burst into tears. "I will stay. For Lyra. For everything." From that day on, the atmosphere in the Sterling mansion changed completely. Every morning, Aurelio sat in the garden, patiently watching his daughter's practice. Lyra improved day by day. And then, on a cool morning, a miracle happened. "Today we'll try something new," Maribel smiled. "Put your crutches aside and try taking a few steps." Lyra looked at her father. "Do you think I can do it, Dad?" "I believe in you." Lyra took a deep breath and set the crutches aside. 1, 2, 3 steps. She trembled, but each step sounded like the beat of a victorious drum. "I did it!" She fell into her father's arms, laughing and crying at the same time. "Dad, I walked." Aurelio held his daughter tightly, his heart overflowing with happiness. Maribel stood nearby, her eyes shining with tears. "See, my little warrior." From that moment on, Aurelio knew his life had changed forever. From the moment Lyra took her first steps, Aurelio began spending more time at home. Not because his schedule allowed it, but because his heart no longer allowed him to leave. In the mornings, he sat on the garden steps, watching Maribel spread out the mat, watching Lyra stretch, and watching the sunlight paint a fragile halo over Maribel's brown hair. He realized that every time she smiled at his daughter, his heart skipped a beat. At first, he thought it was just gratitude. But then there were late afternoons when Lyra was already asleep, and the kitchen was filled only with the scent of warm pastries and the soft glow of yellow light. Maribel stood at the sink, sleeves rolled up, a loose strand of hair falling across her forehead. Aurelio leaned against the doorway, watching her in silence, until one time she turned around and caught his gaze. "Do you need anything else, sir?" she asked quietly. Aurelio shook his head. "No, I just don't want to leave." Maribel lowered her head and smiled. "Then stay." The distance between them was reduced to the scent of soap and the quiet rhythm of their breathing. There were evenings when Lyra fell asleep on the sofa, and Aurelio carried her to her room. Maribel stood beside him, steadying his arm. Her fingers brushed his wrist, very lightly, but it made his heart tighten. He didn't pull his hand away, neither did she. They stood there in silence, their hands touching longer than necessary. No one spoke, but both of them knew something had begun. One evening, with a light rain falling and the scent of wet earth drifting through the open window, Lyra was fast asleep. Maribel stepped out onto the small balcony behind the kitchen to pull the curtains closed. Aurelio followed. She shivered slightly from the cold. Aurelio placed his jacket over her shoulders. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't call me that anymore," he said softly. "Here, you can call me Aurelio." Maribel looked up. For the first time she looked at him, not with the eyes of a household worker, but as a woman standing before a man. Their breaths met. No one stepped forward, but no one stepped back. Aurelio leaned down first, very slowly, as if afraid to shatter the fragile moment. His lips touched her forehead, then her cheek, then lingered for a long time just before her lips. Maribel closed her eyes. Their first kiss was not loud, just the lightest touch, like a whisper from fate. She trembled. He rested his forehead against hers. "I'm sorry," Aurelio whispered. "I didn't plan this, but I think I fell in love with you without realizing it." Maribel didn't answer. She simply placed her hand on his chest, right where his heart was beating fast, and said softly, "I've loved you since the moment you chose to stay for Lyra." Aurelio pulled her into his arms. For the first time in many years, he felt that he belonged in an embrace, not in a building. Outside, the wind continued to blow. The rain kept falling softly. But inside that house, a family was beginning to be born from love. Slowly, peacefully, and profoundly real. On a spring evening in the garden where Lyra had once taken her very first steps, Aurelio proposed to Maribel. "Will you marry me?" Maribel nodded through her tears. That afternoon, the garden behind the Sterling mansion no longer carried its familiar coldness. Rows of white roses lined the stone pathway, their delicate petals trembling in the gentle spring breeze. Sunlight poured down like honey, settling on every branch, every step, and on the wooden chairs arranged neatly in 2 rows beneath the old oak tree. The very place where Aurelio had once stood in silence, watching Lyra learn to walk in her earliest days. It was the place he chose to begin a new chapter of his life. There was no grand orchestra, no endless red carpet, no ostentatious speeches from high society. Only the sound of evening birds, the scent of freshly cut grass, and a peace so profound it felt as though the entire garden was holding its breath. Lyra appeared first. She wore a small white dress, delicate pink ballet flats hugging the legs that had once depended on crutches, now standing steady in the afternoon sun. In her hands was a tiny basket of lavender flowers. Each of Lyra's steps was slow but confident, leaving behind a trail of soft purple petals falling like gentle rain. Aurelio watched his daughter, his heart tightening. Once he had feared she would never walk like other children. And now it was those very legs guiding him toward his marriage. Maribel appeared at the end of the path. She wore no elaborate wedding gown, only a simple white silk dress. Her brown hair fell softly over her shoulders, her face free of heavy makeup. Yet her eyes shone with a rare light, the light of a woman who had finally been seen, valued, and loved in the way she deserved. As Maribel walked toward him, Aurelio felt his throat tighten. For years he had stood before boardrooms and billion-dollar deals, yet he had never trembled the way he did in that moment. In every step she took, he saw all the early mornings she rose to make breakfast for Lyra, the stolen midday training sessions, the late nights riding 2 buses home, and the quiet moments when she wiped away tears no one ever saw. She walked toward him, not as a housekeeper entering his life, but as the woman who had held his heart when it was close to collapse. Lyra stood between them. The little girl looked up at the 2 most important people in her life, then took a deep breath as if carrying out a sacred duty. "Today," Lyra said softly, yet her voice rang clearly in the silent garden. "Today I'm giving Miss Maribel to Dad, but Dad has to promise to take care of her the way she took care of me." The garden fell completely still. Aurelio knelt in front of his daughter, his eyes filled with tears. "I promise. Before you, before this sky, and before everything I've ever missed. I promise." He stood and turned to Maribel. "You gave me a family when I was nothing but an empty man. You gave my daughter legs that believe in themselves, and you gave me a reason to come home." His voice broke. "If you choose to walk forward with me, I will spend the rest of my life protecting the miracle you created." Maribel couldn't speak. Tears fell onto the small bouquet in her hands. She simply nodded. Aurelio slid the delicate ring onto her finger, and in that very moment Lyra ran forward and wrapped her arms around both of them. "Now I really have a family," she laughed through her tears. Under that warm afternoon sun, the Sterling family began a new chapter. 5 years later. The afternoon poured honey-colored sunlight over the vast garden of the Sterling mansion. Pale purple lavender beds swayed gently in the breeze, as if whispering a blessing. Lyra Sterling, 10 years old, ran across the lawn on strong, steady legs. Legs once believed they would never be able to run or play. Her light blonde hair streamed behind her, her laughter ringing out, clear and bright like a summer melody. Behind Lyra was a 4-year-old boy, Leo Sterling, the son of Aurelio and Maribel. He had his father's gray eyes and his mother's warm, gentle smile. "Wait for me, Sister Lyra," Leo laughed, toddling as he tried to keep up. "Slow down, little one," Lyra called back, reaching out to take her brother's hand. The 2 children raced across the grass, hand in hand, leaving behind tiny footprints, and laughter shattered into sunlight. Beneath the white veranda, Aurelio stood leaning against Maribel. His hand rested on her shoulder, while Maribel gently leaned her head against his chest. No words were needed. Together, they simply watched their two children running in the golden afternoon light. 5 years ago, Aurelio had been a lonely man. Maribel had been a woman who scarcely dared to dream. And Lyra had been a little girl defined by crutches. Now, before them, stood something that money, power, and fame could never buy. A family, a daughter who had learned how to run, a son born from love. And two people who had once been broken, now standing side by side, wrapped in a peace so deep it left them breathless. A soft breeze drifted through the garden. Lyra turned back and called out, "Dad! Mom! Look at Leo!" Aurelio smiled and gently squeezed Maribel's shoulder. "I'm looking at our miracle," he whispered. Maribel replied softly, "And I'm living inside it." Under the sunlit sky, two children ran freely across the grass, while two hearts that had once been lost now stood together, watching the miracle they had created, hand in hand.